Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over the best Demon Hunter build for the new buffed Marauder set. It got a nice huge buff in Season 25 and it's actually currently on the leaderboards, actually the best Demon Hunter build. But this is going to be a build for actually two different builds combined into one video this time because the builds are so similar. It's just swapping just a couple things that I'm going to be including two different builds in one video. Usually I tell you guys a couple different variants of the build and I'll still mention it in this video, but I have two different builds because this is going to be the best build for MultiShot as well as the cluster arrow. They're basically the same though in terms of like what you're looking for on your pieces of gear. So starting right off, I want to go over the newest changes to this build as well as the new legendary soul shards, because this is what makes this build so much more powerful, because it's kind of a pet build, even though most of our damage is coming from sentries that count as pets. So in terms of the newer things to go over really quick, so with the new Marauder 6-piece and 4-piece bonus, we get a nice bonus to the sentries just firing on their own. So with the 4-piece bonus, we have the ability to make it so the sentries will just cast the hatred spenders. This is the biggest change with the Marauder set, which makes it so much more powerful, is they will fire on their own. Previously you had a fire and they would also mimic your fire, but now they get to fire on their own, so that's why this build is so powerful. The other newer change is going to be the two soul shards, Sliver of Terror as well as the Dregs of Lies are pretty much going to be the best in slot because it's one of them's for pets, the other one's for like cooldown. But if you can get these, keep in mind these legendary soul shards can roll all over the place with the modifiers on it. So you try to look out for some of these to make it as similar as possible, but keep in mind it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect just to get the build up and running. Like in the gameplay in the background you guys are seeing is going to be the equivalent of a Torment 16, which is the highest Torment difficulty that you guys can do in the game. It's a GR 75s that we're doing kind of for speed runs. But the Sliver of Terror gives you extra bonus damage. It gives you negative cooldown reduction. Keep in mind, these stats can roll all over the place. Like instead of dexterity, it could be something completely different. So you might not always get the same results on these legendary soul shards. And how you farm them is you can just defeat bosses. If you just do GRs, you'll eventually just get these as drops. But you're going to be upgrading them as well. And then you can get these different modifiers. The modifiers that are really nice on it are going to be the very bottom two in the orange text. So our cooldowns are going to be increased, but for every skill on cooldown, we are going to be taking 12.5% reduced damage and deal 12.5% increased damage. And then our attack speed is also going to be increased, with our critical hit chance also being increased by 5% for each skill on cooldown. This is actually a really nice big change. So that's the Sliver of Terror. That's one of the newer things that got added to Season 25, as well as the Dregs of Lies. So with the Dregs of Lies, we're looking at the very bottom two lines of orange text. We're going to be dealing 25% less damage, but our pets deal 25% increased damage. Normally you think, does that just cancel each other out? Why would you even care about that? It's not actually how it works. How it works is we deal 25% less damage with our attacks, but our pets don't have that damage reduction. They just get an increase of 25% damage. That's how it works. And then on top of that, each time our pet hits an enemy, our damage is going to be increased by 0.5% for 5 seconds, and it stacks up to 100 times. Once you reach 100 stacks, it resets. So basically, we're going to be ramping up our damage with this build, and that's why it's so much fun, and this is why this season would be kind of different for this build, as you already have a bunch of pets. So it's very easy to proc that. So in terms of the build, like I mentioned before, those are like the biggest newest changes here. But in addition to that, the build is very similar. Right now, you guys are seeing me use Cluster Arrow. A minute ago, I was using MultiShot. The gameplay is exactly the same. It just depends on what you want to play. There's a few different variations of it. If you want to run, let's say, the Convention of Elements and Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, that's totally viable. Or if you want to run Focus and Restraint, heck, you can run the Traveler's Pledge. These are all viable builds. This was taken today over on the leaderboards. There's multiple different builds over here. Right now, it's already cleared a GR 144. But for the most part, the builds are going to be interchangeable. Like if you want to run one thing that you see on this one, the builds are very, very similar anyways. It just depends. Do you want to run with MultiShot or do you want to run with the cluster out at the end of the day? That's the difference. But in terms of the build, they're very similar. So what we're going to have for our pieces of gear, which I'll go over in a second, I want to go over the kind of the playstyle as well as like what we're going to do for our skills. So for the first skill, we got Smokescreen, Vanishing Powder. This one is actually interchangeable. You could play Tumble if you want to play Tumble. You just need something to kind of get away from maybe dangerous situations. Then we're going to run MultiShot with Arsenal. That's the fire rune, so it's going to shoot these little like rockets out. And then we have Companion, Wolf Companion, or Boar Companion. These are both viable options. Wolf for more damage, Boar for more survivability. Then we're going to run Vengeance. You can run Seath, or if you want to, you can also run Darkheart. Seeing both of those over on the leaderboard. So damage reduction or more hatred, so more resource to spend. And then Preparation with Punishment for more resource. It also puts another cooldown if you want to, and that's going to activate our Sliver of Terror, because once we have more cooldowns, we do more damage. And then Sentry, Polar Station, we activate the Cold Rune so it can chill the enemies, slowing them down, so we can proc our other buffs over here. Now, in terms of the differences, you can, if you want to, run Evasive Fire with the Wraps of Clarity. That is kind of a variation that's on the leaderboard as well. Both of them are very viable. Reaper's Wraps right now is currently #1, but if you're running Reaper's Wraps, then yeah, you won't benefit off of running Evasive Fire as much as you would by just running Reaper's Wraps, because you're going to get more resource to spam. And then for our passives, it can be kind of swapped in and out. Cold of the Weak, Custom Engineering, Ambush, Steady Aim, where you can run the Cheat Death. All those are very viable options. Ballistics as well for the additional like rocket that gets shot out. Another viable option if you're playing multi-shot. But if you are running the Cluster Arrow, you're also running Fire. It's literally, like I said, the same build. That's why I just combined them into one video. Loaded for a Bear is the one that you're going to be wanting to run. Now, in terms of the items that we are looking for, it's going to be very, very similar. Again, I already mentioned the difference over here with either the Reaper's Wraps or Wraps of Clarity. However, in the cube, it's a little bit different. So if you're running Focus and Restraint, you're going to run Royal Ring of Grandeur over here on both of the builds. However, the belt is going to be the same, Zoe's Secret, so we can get extra damage reduction. And then we have Manticore, or we can throw in the Dead Man's Legacy. Dead Man's Legacy for the multi-shot build, or if you want to run the build for the Cluster Arrow, you're going to want to put Manticore inside of the cube. The reason why is Yang's Recurve gives you a bonus of reduced resource cost, which you cannot get on Manticore. That's why you cube the Manticore. But that's pretty much it for like the differences. Now, the rest is going to be, again, kind of swappable. Like you can run Conventional Elements, you can run Obsidian of the Zodiac in both builds. They're totally viable. But what you're looking for is pretty much the same thing on every other Diablo build, which is crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and then you can get area damage if you can get it. Now, this build is going to be a little bit different because you can actually get increased sentry damage on multiple pieces of your gear, and you can get increased multi-shot, or technically Cluster Arrow if you want to play that build, on your helm and your boots, so you can get increased damage on like 2 different things, which is not normal for other builds, but that is something to take note of. So as far as the legendary gems, even though these aren't technically legendary gems, they're soul shards, or socketed basically like gems, we're running Sliver of Terror and we're running Dregs of Lies. And then we're running the Zystone of Vengeance. That's the one where you get to deal increased damage when we are further away. And then the Bane of Trapped, that's the one where it slows them down and you get to deal more damage. And then Enforcer, this is the most important one. Our pets take 90% less damage, but the most important stat, increase the damage of our pets. Very, very good stuff indeed. And then we're running the Captain Crimson set, as well as the Marauder set with Royal Ring of Grandeur. We only have to run 2 pieces of the Captain Crimsons and then 5 pieces of the Marauder. For the other gems, we want diamonds. You could throw in emeralds if you want, but you need the survivability, so the diamonds are going to be the best. If you really want the best of the best build for pushing, then you definitely want diamonds. If you're just doing speed and you don't have enough damage, throw in emeralds. It's totally fine in the very beginning as long as you meet the survivability requirements. Now, in terms of the helm, I'll mention the important stats. Pretty much, you want main stat on every single piece of gear until you get a huge amount of paragons, and then you can roll up that main stat on your ring if you want to. You can roll off the main stat on your rings, again, depending on what build that you want to go for and what you actually have access to. You can get the flat damage instead of like the main stat. On our amulet, we can roll off the main stat for increased elemental damage. In our case, it's going to be fire. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as every other Diablo build. Again, crit chance, crit damage. For the helm, what we want is crit hit at chance as well as multi-shot damage. For the shoulders, we want to also get, if we can, get area damage, cooldown reduction, reducing the resource costs, sentry damage. These are all great options. Main stat, obviously can be okay as well, but just try to get that sentry damage if you can. On our gloves, we want that crit chance, crit damage. We can get area damage. All those are great. Cooldown reduction could also be very viable for this build. For the chest piece, the only important thing is really getting that extra sentry damage. You can get main stat, vitality is fine too. The only important thing with the bracers is going to be that crit hit chance as well as that elemental damage, which again is going to be fire. Belt, nothing important with that at all. Just main stat, you get your vitality, and then you get all res, life, percent. That could be great. Nothing particularly to mention with the pants. And then with Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, doesn't really matter the rolls. They always roll the same anyways. Roll off resource costs if you want to. It doesn't really matter what you roll off, except for, I would say, probably keep that reduction of the cooldown on the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. And crit chance could be okay as well. For our Ying's recurve, the only important thing is to really get that resource cost is to be as high as possible, just so you can spam a lot more. Nothing too important with the boots other than I already mentioned, just getting that multi-shot damage. And then with the Bombardier's Rucksack, getting that increased attack speed, you can get area damage. Well, it's always going to usually roll with attack speed. Crit chance is also great to have on it. That increased area damage, cooldown reduction, and obviously getting that sentry increased damage is great for that. And then for the other build, again, you can run Focus and Restraint if you want to, and then pretty much it's the exact same thing. In terms of the passives, you can run Coal of the Week, you can run Custom Engineering, Ambush, Steady Aim. These are all great, but if you are running the multi-shot build, the only important thing to really mention here is Ballistics is great to have as well. That's going to make it so you have that extra little like homing rocket, and they're going to be doing extra damage. But that's going to pretty much wrap it up for the build. I will also include the max roll for this if you guys want to just check the website, because it's a great website for all the Diablo builds, and I'll post those in the pinned comment just in case I was too fast, or if you want to mouse over anything, you guys can go ahead and do so. But that pretty much wraps it up for the build. Let me know, guys, what you guys think of this build for season at 25. Do you guys like the multi-shot, or do you guys like the cluster arrow build better? Again, keep in mind, if you're running cluster arrow, feel free to not run Focus and Restraint. You can still run conventional elements, Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. I checked all of these right before I made my video. They are so close within each other. It really comes down to how lucky did you get on the Rift. There might be some different min-maxing for some people. If you also want to run the Entangling Shot build, that is another one. However, I might cover that in later. It's a much more difficult build to play. There's also the Bola and Pale build, which I will be covering very soon, because that build is completely different, and it will be definitely fun to cover. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. And if you're new here and do want to see more Diablo videos in the future, hit subscribe, turn the bell, and you'll definitely see more gaming stuff very soon. I'll catch you guys next vid, and I'm out. Peace.